And on this particular model, we're going to leave the nut on. So the nut's perfectly in place. Generally, it's good practice to take the nut off when you are doing a fret dress, but my files are pretty damn good. They're really expensive, and I'm confident I can do a really good job without having to take the nut off. But generally, we do take the nut off. Alright, just check the straightness one more time before we do anything else, just to make sure. We are straight. I think it's a high fret that we're resting on. Just for consistency's sake, we're going to check it different places, because there is some high frets that may be interfering, like right there. I don't want to tighten the truss rod any more than it already is. Alright, so now comes the fun bit where we prep the board. So this bit will be skipped or fast forwarded because it's pretty boring. And all we're going to do is we're going to tape off the entire fretboard in preparation for the leveling. Unfortunately, I'm a bit out of tape because lockdown, and I don't really like using the Bunnings website. But I'm going to have to next week because I desperately need more green painter's tape. So just protect our pickup, protect the sides of the guitar, which we'll be working on. Well, not working on, but you get the gist. I personally don't like using this blue painter's tape as much. I like the green stuff more. But again, I'm all out. The blue stuff is perfectly fine. Industry standard, everyone uses it. I just find it a bit too tacky. If you're dealing with a Gibson or a nitro finished fender, you want to avoid using the blue, because it can rip up the finish or it can damage the finish with the tackiness. The way to get around that, if you are curious, is simply by going like that and detacking it. Do it a few times. As you can see, it's starting to not stick. Still hear it sticky, so you just keep going like that. And you just remove that stickiness. So now we're pretty much at the less than what this would be. So there's your helpful hint of the day. So anyway, I'll do this, and when we come back, we'll suss out the fretboard one more time and mark all the high spots. And then we will begin the fun. Cheers, guys. Alright, perfect timing. David Bowie just finished. So, now, neck is as straight as it's going to get, which is fine by me. So now we're just going to go over the frets one more time and start marking. So a method I like to use is I put my texter in my mouth, like so, and I go over it with a fret rocker. So I'm going to suss out what's high. So again, this has been used, so there are wear marks, and the action was stupidly low. The action was extremely low, so there are wear marks all throughout the neck. And the original owner of this guitar, who, as I said, is an absolutely fantastic, amazing musician, played the entire neck. So every single area has got wear marks. Now there are a few high frets, as in the height of the actual fret, especially down here. And the problem that a lot of us guitar techs end up seeing is, in terms of wear, is when there is a high fret or a higher fret than the rest. Please don't. So just to clarify, I'm not talking about unseated, I'm talking about high. The more you play, the more it wears in. So there's actually more divots up here where the frets were higher than there is down here. So that is something we will address. And there was some ping out around here, but again, we're dealing with an action of 0.5 of a millimeter. So there is going to be some buzz out or ping outs or dead notes when you go that low, but generally your distortion covers that up. And it is an electric guitar, so the sound doesn't actually come from here, it comes from here. Well, technically it comes from the jack, but you know what I mean. So we're just going to mark all the frets with black texture, like so. I'll show you what I've done. Probably be 2 versions of this, long and a short. Again, I'll sort of like focus on the areas. So everything's been marked with black texture, as you can see. And now we grab our leveling file. I got one of these bad boys. It's a clip-on. It's got strong magnets, and we want to use our diamond file. So there's 4 levels of aggressiveness, 3 of which are for frets. Jesus Christ, here comes the storm. Hold on, I'll be back. Alright, everything's been secured. So as I was saying, I've got 3 different grits for our frets. I personally like to use the diamond file because it's not as aggressive as the actual file, and it goes 2 ways, which is why we've left the nut in. So first thing we want to do is go over the tops of the frets of the file, and we let the file do the work, okay? So you don't have to push down, you don't have to do anything, you just let the file slide along, remove those high spots. And you just follow your marker, and you'll see pretty damn fast the high spots you are removing. So again, I'll speed this bit up so you have to watch me do it. And I'll listen to some music, and when we get back, I'll show you probably halfway point of what's happening, and then we can go from there. Alright, so we're about the halfway point of where I want to be. Remember, this bowl only takes up what it needs to, so it's not that aggressive, but it's aggressive enough to do. So if you can see down the neck, you can start to see how much material has actually been taken off the high spots and how much has been taken off the low spots. So we're almost sort of there. Of course, I've got to remeasure everything and do it again, but you can also see some of the divots that are still in the frets, which will be removed. And yeah, but you can see that those first, the second fret and the third fret were much higher than the first and the fourth. As you can see the amount of texture that's been removed. So I'll keep going. When we come back, it will be done. One other thing to note is technically I don't have to do this. I could have set it up with a higher action and we would have been sweet for the most part. But just for the sake of giving you the best product and completing the guitar, which is what I like to do, I like to make sure the guitar is as good as it can be. That's why we are doing this. Obviously it was also needed. Most guitars do need some form of fretwork, but yeah, so the reason for doing this is to make sure that when you do get this guitar, it's good to go and you won't need to worry about it. Cheers. So just then I was just checking the actual level of the neck, and yeah, so as I suspected, there was a few high frets interfering with my adjustment, and I'm literally perfectly straight, which is awesome. So yeah, back to my music. So sorry, before I put the music on, we're almost there. There's just a few more spots to tackle. You can apply more black texture if you wish, if it makes it easier for you, but I can visibly see through experience what areas were high and what's not, especially around here. So you can definitely see how much material has been taken off compared to the rest. It's still all level. It's still all within radius through the magic of voodoo. But yeah, I'll keep going and we'll go to stage 2 soon. Alright, so I'm going to stop there. I think that's more than enough, but we'll just double check a few areas. Especially those high areas. And there was another one down here which has been sorted. Oh, a little bit more. Just a little bit more in this area here. Go for it. Alright, cool. So I'm happy with that. That didn't take too long. If I use the more aggressive file, it'll take even less. This is the easiest part of a fret level and crown, of course. Wipe away the dust. So by doing that, we've left some marks in the frets, so the frets aren't exactly the smoothest at the moment. So what I like to do is I grab a... Where'd I put it, actually? Probably a good question. Alright, so what I like to do is I like to grab one of these. It's just a cork sanding pad. Have some coffee. Get that out the way. So now we grab some sandpaper. So we're going to start with 400 grit. So 400 grit is more than enough to take off any of the excess material that we don't need, and make sure that later on when we do the polishing process, it's not as mundane. So we're actually going to polish out a lot of the marks just by simply doing this. So we get our 400 grit sandpaper. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough. And we always want to maintain contact on at least 2 or 3 frets. So there's 2 ways doing it. You can go back and forth like I'm about to, and you can also go that way. I'm going to go back and forth because the purpose of this is also to level any remaining high spots. It's also helpful to rest your neck like that. So again, I'll put my music on and I'll do this, and then when we get back, we'll switch over to 600 grit, and then we'll be ready to do the crowning. Sorry, I'm cutting in too much, I know. I'm probably going to cut all this stuff out. But just with a level itself, there's a few ways of doing it. You could use a file like this, which is, what, like 15 centimeters. You can also use a beam. You can do the whole thing at once to get even pressure all around. Both ways are perfectly fine. There isn't a right or wrong when it comes to it. The reason why I don't use a beam is because I just hate replacing sandpaper. I have to always replace my 400 grit sandpaper because it wears down pretty fast when dealing with hard frets like this. So yeah, that's why. While we're here, while I've got you, just going to put some tape around the nut, because now that I'm sanding, I don't want to hit the nut. So, yeah. Alright, so that's enough of the 400 grit. It's already been worn down compared to the actual rough side, so have a listen. 400 grit, fantastic stuff. Now, we'll switch over to 600 grit. 600 grit is awesome, so it still takes off a little tiny bit, but it's more so in the polishing realm now. So we just line it up to the best of our ability. I don't want about that much. Take off the excess. You can cut it to length and stuff like that, but again, it's sort of like a disposable medium. Just like so. And we do the exact same thing. We'll just go over all the frets with 600 grit, and then we can move on to our crown. I'll go back to listening to some Ozzy Osbourne, and we're back. Alright, so now I'm just going back and forth. So this is generally the way we polish frets, because this is the way you will be playing. So when you bend up, of course, you'll be facing this way. And this is just to see how many marks remain. But the rest of the marks will be sanded out after the crowning process. So this is just for me to have a look. And I'm not going to worry about sanding any more out with this after I just do a few passes. Now, if this was a Gibson, we'd be done. I'm joking. Gibson have what's called speed frets, and the speed frets are crowned, but they're not crowned very well, so they're very flat up the top. Not all Gibsons have it, of course, but some of the older ones do, and they coined it in their marketing as speed frets. They're super bumpy. They work though. But anyway, so I'll show you where we're at now. So as you can see, the board's been leveled. Hopefully you can see it. And everything's even, ready to go for crowning. I don't think it's coming up that well on camera, but that's okay. You don't have to worry about that. I also got a point of reference on top of the fret. I can see that all the frets have been leveled evenly. And I've got a nice little flat spot on all the tops, which is actually quite even throughout the entire guitar. So we're going to call that a job well done. At the moment, 600 grit doesn't feel that good, but we're not even at the step of polishing yet. So we'll grab my brush, just give it a bit of wipe down, inhale that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful metal dust. And just from point of reference, just by looking, because I did go this way, I've got a little bit more sanding to do there, and a little bit more here, but overall, just about good to go. Like when it does come after I crown to the polishing, it's a little bit of 600 grit and a little bit of 1200 grit, and then the rest is just polishing methods. So yeah, I'll be back shortly, and then when we come back, we will go over the leveling process, and I'll try to capture it this time and show you what I'm doing. I'll do one fret, or maybe do 2 frets just to give you an idea, and then I'll speed through the rest, and when we come back, we'll polish it up and string her up. Cheers.